guys, welcome to my channel. I have a new bedtime story just for you. Let's begin. The Little Moon Lantern. At the edge of a sleepy forest where the trees leaned close together as if sharing secrets, there lived a small fox named Luma. Luma had soft red fur, bright amber eyes, and a tail so fluffy that birds sometimes mistook it for a warm place to rest. She lived beneath the roots of an old oak tree, in a cozy den lined with moss, feathers, dry leaves, and one blue ribbon she had found beside the stream. Every morning, the forest woke in layers. First came the hush before sunrise, when everything was still blue and silver. Then came the birds, one by one, practicing their songs as if they had forgotten them in the night. Then the rabbits began to hop through the clover. The squirrels scampered along branches. The bees stretched their tiny wings inside the flowers, and finally the sun would rise over the hill, warming the treetops with gold. But Luma's favorite time was not morning. It was night. She loved the moment when the forest slowed down, when the birds tucked their heads beneath their wings, when the rabbits returned to their burrows, when the wind moved gently instead of rushing, when the shadows softened and everything seemed to breathe more quietly. Most of all, Luma loved the moon. Every night, before curling into her mossy bed, she would climb out of her den, sit beside the old oak tree, and look up through the branches. "Good night, old lantern," she would whisper. The moon never answered with words, of course, but it answered in other ways. It painted silver lines on the stream. It turned spiderwebs into lace. It made the mushrooms glow softly after rain. It rested on the backs of sleeping deer and on the wings of quiet moths. To Luma, the moon was not just a light in the sky. It was a friend. One evening, after a long, warm day, Luma wandered farther than usual.
She crossed the fern path, past the blackberry bushes, and followed the little stream until she reached a meadow she had never seen before. The meadow was wide and quiet, filled with tall grass that swayed like waves on a green sea. In the middle of it stood a stone. It was not a large stone, but it was smooth and pale, and in the moonlight it looked almost as if it had fallen from the sky. Luma climbed onto it and sat very still. From there, she could see almost the whole forest. She could see the tall pines in the north, dark and pointed. She could see the willow trees by the stream, dipping their long fingers into the water. She could see the hill where the owls nested, and above everything, she could see the moon, round and bright. "This is the best place in the whole forest," Luma whispered. Just then, a small voice said, "It is, isn't it?" Luma jumped. Out from the tall grass came a mouse wearing a little cap made from an acorn top. "I didn't mean to frighten you," said the mouse. "You didn't," said Luma, although her tail was still twice its usual size. "Well, maybe a little." The mouse smiled. "My name is Miri," she said. "I come here when I can't sleep." "I'm Luma," said the fox. "I come here because I like the moon." Miri looked up. "The moon is nice," she agreed. "It makes the dark less dark." Luma liked that sentence very much. The two of them sat together for a while, not talking. Sometimes that is the best kind of company, someone beside you who does not need to fill the quiet. At last, Miri yawned. "I should go home," she said. "My family will wonder where I am." "Good night, Miri," said Luma. "Good night, Luma." And the little mouse disappeared into the grass. From that night on, Luma often visited the meadow stone. Sometimes Miri was there. Sometimes she was not. Sometimes an owl flew overhead without making a sound. Sometimes the wind bent the grass in ripples. Sometimes nothing happened at all, and that was wonderful too. But one night, everything changed. The day had been strange from the beginning. The birds did not sing as brightly. The air felt heavy. The ants carried crumbs into their tunnels in a hurry. The squirrels filled their nests with
stars should have appeared, but they too were hidden. A cold wind moved through the trees. The forest, usually so peaceful at night, became uneasy. The rabbits stayed deep in their burrows. The deer gathered close together beneath the pines.
The frogs stopped singing. Even the stream seemed to lose its sparkle.
Luma walked to the fern path, hoping that perhaps the moon could be seen from the meadow. But the path was nearly black. She had never noticed before how many roots crossed it, how many stones waited in the shadows, how many little sounds the forest made when there was no moonlight to soften them. A twig snapped. Luma froze. "Who's there?" she whispered. "It's me," said Miri, stepping out from beneath a fern. Her acorn cap was tilted to one side. "I can't find my way home." Luma hurried to her. "You're far from your burrow," she said. "I went to the meadow," Miri explained. "I thought the moon might come out, but it didn't, and now everything looks different." Luma looked up again. The clouds covered every bit of sky. "The moon is only hidden," she said. Miri nodded, but her whiskers trembled. What if it forgets to come back?
Luma wanted to say that moons never forget, but she did not know if that was true. She had never had to wonder before. So instead, she said, "Then we will remember it for a while." Miri looked at her. How? Luma thought. She looked at the dark path. She looked at the black trees. She looked at the little mouse beside her, trying very hard to be brave. Then she remembered something in her den. "Come with me," said Luma. The two friends hurried back to the old oak tree. Inside Luma's den, everything smelled of moss and dry leaves. Luma pushed aside a curled fern, moved 3 pine cones, and pulled out a tiny lantern. It was made from a hollow acorn. Luma had found the acorn shell after a storm. She had carefully cleaned it, made little windows in its sides, and tied a stem across the top for a handle. She had never used it for anything important. It had mostly sat in the corner, looking charming. Tonight, however, it seemed exactly right. "It's beautiful," whispered Miri. "It needs a light," said Luma. Just then, something blinked near the entrance of the den. Once, twice. A small firefly floated inside. "Excuse me," said Luma politely. "Would you mind helping us?" The firefly blinked again. Luma had always believed that fireflies understood more than anyone guessed. "We need a little light," she said, "just until the moon comes back." The firefly drifted into the hollow acorn and settled there, glowing softly. The lantern filled with golden light. Miri gasped. "It's like a baby moon." Luma smiled. Together, they stepped outside. The acorn lantern did not make the whole forest bright. It did not chase away every shadow. It did not reach the tops of the trees or uncover the hidden stars. But it lit the path just enough. And sometimes, just enough is a very powerful thing. Luma carried the lantern low so Miri could see where to walk. They moved slowly along the fern path, over roots, around stones, beneath dripping leaves. As they walked, they came upon a hedgehog sitting beside a puddle. "Oh dear," said the hedgehog. "Oh dear, oh dear." "What's wrong?" asked Luma. "My name is Bram," said the hedgehog. "I was bringing berries to my grandmother, but I dropped them when the dark came down. Now I can't find them." Luma lowered the lantern. In its glow, they saw blueberries scattered among the leaves. "There they are," said Miri. Bram gathered the berries carefully. "Thank you," he said. "I thought the night had swallowed them."
mushrooms.
There they found not one glowworm, but 7. They were having a quiet meeting about damp bark. When Bram explained the problem, the glowworms became very serious. "The moon has been good to us," said the oldest glowworm. "It's silvered our log many times. We should help," said another. One by one, the glowworms climbed into a small curled leaf that Bram carried like a basket. Their greenish lights glowed softly, making the wet mushrooms shine. Now the forest path was a little brighter, not bright like day, not bright like morning, but bright enough for small paws and careful steps. They continued toward the meadow. Along the way, they met Sola the owl, sitting low on a branch with her feathers fluffed. "Sola," called Luma, "why are you sitting so low?" "I do not like flying when I cannot see the spaces between the trees," said Sola. "The moon usually shows me." "We are going to the meadow stone," said Luma, lifting the acorn lantern. "We are making a light until the moon returns." Sola turned her great round eyes toward the lantern. "A small light," she said. "Yes," said Luma. Sola looked at Miri, who stood proudly beside Luma despite being very small. She looked at Bram with his leaf basket of glowworms. Then she opened her wings. "Small lights look larger from above," she said. "I will come." Sola flew slowly ahead, guiding them past low branches. Soon they met 2 rabbits, Nib and Nella, who were trying to find the entrance to their burrow. "It was here this morning," said Nib. "Burrows do not usually move," said Nella, "but tonight I am not so sure." Luma lowered the lantern and found the burrow entrance hidden behind a curtain of grass. "There," she said. The rabbits sighed with relief. When they heard where Luma and the others were going, they looked at each other. "We have white stones in our burrow," said Nella. "They shine a little when light touches them." "We can bring them," said Nib. So the rabbits dashed inside and returned with a pouch of smooth, pale stones. Now there was Luma with the acorn lantern, Miri with her brave little steps, Bram with the glowworms, Sola flying overhead, and the 2 rabbits carrying moon-coloured stones. The group made its way through the forest. At last they reached the meadow. But the meadow did not look like the gentle place Luma remembered. Without the moon, the tall grass seemed too tall. The pale stone in the centre was barely visible. The far side of the meadow disappeared into darkness. Miri moved closer to Luma. "It feels different," she whispered. "It is the same meadow," said Luma. "It is only wearing a different coat tonight." They walked to the stone. Luma climbed on top and placed the acorn lantern in the middle. Its little golden glow spread across the stone. Bram placed the glowworms in a circle around it. Nib and Nella arranged the pale stones in a winding path through the grass. Sola flew up to the nearest tree and watched over them. For a moment they all stood quietly. The lights were lovely, but the sky remained dark. "The moon still cannot see us," said Miri. Luma looked at the tiny lights. She looked at the huge sky. For the first time that night she felt very small. Her little lantern suddenly seemed almost foolish. What was an acorn lantern compared with the moon? What were a few glowworms compared with the stars? The wind moved through the grass, and Luma lowered her head. "I thought it would help," she said softly. "It does help," said Bram. "I can see my paws," said Miri. "I can see the burrow path," said Nella. "I can see the space between branches," said Sola from above. Luma looked up. All around her, the animals were no longer trembling in the dark. They were gathered together in the glow of the small lights. Their faces were calmer, their voices were softer. The darkness was still there, but it was not as lonely. Then, from somewhere beyond the meadow, came another light. A deer stepped through the grass. Upon her antlers hung strands of tiny, shining beetles, resting like living jewels. "My name is Evera," said the deer. "We saw your lights from the pine grove." Behind her came more deer. Then a family of raccoons appeared, moths arrived, pale and fluttering, their wings catching every glimmer. Then frogs came from the stream, each carrying a drop of water on a leaf so the lights could sparkle in it. The meadow began to shine, not all at once, not suddenly, but slowly, softly, gently, a glow here, a glimmer there, a reflection, a shimmer, a blink, a tiny spark. The animals placed lights along the grass, around the stone, beneath the trees, beside the stream, and on the little hill beyond the meadow. The winding path of pale stones grew brighter. The glowworms formed careful circles. The fireflies floated above everyone like golden thoughts. The beetles on Evera's antlers shone green and blue. The water drops held pieces of light and made them tremble beautifully. The meadow, once dark and uncertain, became a field of tiny moons. Luma stood on the stone and watched in wonder. She had brought one little lantern. Now the whole forest was helping. Miri climbed onto the stone beside her. "Do you think the moon can see us now?" she asked. Luma looked up. The clouds were still thick, but something about them had changed. Their edges seemed softer. A pale brightness pressed gently from behind them. "I think," said Luma, "the moon is trying." The animals settled around the meadow. Since they were already gathered, and since the night was still dark, Sola the owl suggested they tell stories. "Stories are also a kind of light," she said. Everyone agreed this sounded wise, because owls usually did. Bram told the first story. He told of the time he mistook a chestnut for another hedgehog, and apologized to it for 3 whole minutes before realizing his mistake. The rabbits laughed so hard they rolled into each other. Then Nella told a story about a carrot that had grown in the exact shape of a sleeping duck. The raccoons told a story about washing a shiny pebble for half a day because they thought it might turn into treasure. The frogs sang a little song about rain. It had only 3 words: plip, plop, dream. But they sang it in such a serious way that everyone listened quietly. Finally, Miri told a story. Her voice was small at first, but it grew steadier. She told of a young mouse who was afraid of shadows. This mouse used to think every shadow was a monster, until one night she discovered that some shadows were only flowers, some were only stones, and one was only her own tail, looking much larger than usual. "And what did the mouse learn?" asked Sola. Miri smiled. "That fear can stretch things," she said, "but light can shrink them back." Everyone became quiet after that. Luma looked at her little friend with admiration. Miri had been frightened earlier, but now she had given the whole forest a sentence to remember. Fear can stretch things. Light can shrink them back. The wind softened. The animals grew sleepy. One by one, they began to yawn, but no one wanted to leave yet. The darkness beyond the meadow still felt too deep, and the moon had not fully returned, so Luma said, "Perhaps we should make the meadow comfortable." That was an excellent idea. The squirrels gathered dry leaves, the rabbits brought soft grass, the deer stood around the smaller animals to block the wind, the raccoons found a flat piece of bark and used it as a table for berries. The frogs added smooth stones from the stream. Soon the meadow became not only bright, but cosy. The animals nestled together in little groups. Bram curled into a prickly ball beside the glowworms, who did not mind, because they were used to unusual neighbours. Miri sat against Luma's warm side. Sola tucked one foot beneath her feathers. The rabbits leaned ear to ear. Even the trees around the meadow seemed to bend closer. Luma felt sleepiness tugging at her, but she kept her eyes on the sky. She wanted to be awake when the moon returned. After a long while, Ivara the deer stepped beside her. "You are tired,"
said Ivara. A little, admitted Luma. You do not have to hold up the whole night by yourself. Luma looked at the acorn lantern. I only wanted everyone to feel safe. Ivara lowered her head kindly. And they do, she said, but not because you made the darkness disappear, because you helped them remember they were not alone in it. Luma thought about this. It seemed important. Maybe bravery was not always a loud thing. Maybe it was not roaring or racing or pretending not to be afraid. Maybe sometimes bravery was simply carrying a small lantern down a dark path and saying, "Come with me." The clouds shifted. A thin silver line appeared in the sky. All the animals looked up. The line widened. The clouds slowly parted, like curtains being drawn aside by invisible hands, and there, behind them, was the moon, round, gentle, bright, the whole meadow filled with silver. The stream flashed awake, the grass shone, the pale stones glowed, the animals' eyes reflected the moonlight. Every leaf, every feather, every whisker seemed touched by calm. No one spoke for a moment. Then Miri whispered. It came back. Luma smiled. It was always there, said Sola from her branch, only hidden. The moon rose higher. Its light joined the fireflies, the glowworms, the beetles, the water drops, and the little acorn lantern. The meadow was brighter than Luma had ever seen it, but now the brightness was not only from the sky, it was from everyone. The animals began to make their way home.
Sola guided the rabbits to their burrow. Ivara led the deer back to the pines. The raccoons carried their shells to the stream. The frogs hopped away, singing softly, "Blip, plop, dream." Bram took a few berries to his grandmother, though he had eaten several by accident while waiting. Miri stayed with Luma until the meadow was nearly empty. "Will you come here tomorrow night?" asked Miri. "Yes," said Luma, "even if the moon is bright." "Especially then," Miri smiled, "and if it is dark again." Luma lifted the acorn lantern. "Then we know what to do." Together they walked back through the forest. This time the path was silver and clear. The roots no longer looked like claws. The stones no longer seemed strange. The trees were once again trees, old and kind and full of sleepy birds. When they reached Miri's burrow, the little mouse paused. "Thank you for finding me," she said. "Thank you for walking with me," said Luma. Miri disappeared inside. Luma continued to her den beneath the old oak. The firefly flew out of the acorn lantern and blinked once, as if saying good night. "Thank you," Luma whispered. The firefly rose into the branches and joined the others. Luma placed the acorn lantern beside her bed. It no longer glowed, but it seemed precious now. It had carried a small light through a large darkness. That was no small thing. She curled into her mossy nest. The old oak creaked softly above her. The wind moved gently through the leaves. Far away, the stream murmured over stones. Luma looked out through the round entrance of her den. She could see the moon between the branches. "Good night, old lantern," she whispered. The moon shone down on the forest. It shone on Miri, sleeping safely in her burrow. It shone on Bram's grandmother, eating blueberries. It shone on the rabbits curled together. It shone on Sola's feathers. It shone on Ivara's antlers. It shone on the meadow stone, where a few glowworms still lingered, proud of their work. And it shone on Luma, whose eyes were growing heavier and heavier. Just before she fell asleep, she thought she heard the moon whisper back, "Good night, little lantern." The next morning, the forest woke in layers again. First came
sat the acorn lantern, and tucked beneath it was one tiny pale stone from the meadow. She smiled. After breakfast, which was mostly berries and one mushroom she decided not to eat after all, Luma went to visit Miri. Miri was already outside her burrow, drawing circles in the dust with a twig. "I was thinking," said Miri. "That sounds serious," said Luma. "It is," said Miri. "What if another dark night comes and someone else gets lost?" Luma sat beside her. "That could happen."
"What if we made a path," said Miri, "a moon path from the forest to the meadow stone?"
Luma's ears perked up. "With the pale stones?" "Yes, and maybe shells, and maybe pieces of bark, things that can catch moonlight." So that day, Luma and Miri began collecting things. They found smooth white stones by the stream. They found pale shells left behind by old snails. They found pieces of silver bark from birch trees. They found a feather that looked ordinary in daylight, but shimmered when turned just so. Bram helped by rolling small stones into piles, although he sometimes forgot which pile was which. Nib and Nella helped arrange the path, though Nib kept suggesting it should lead past the carrot patch.
Solo watched from a branch and gave advice like, "A little to the left," and "No, your other left." By sunset, a delicate path wound from the old oak tree through the ferns, past the mushroom log, around the bend in the stream, and into the meadow. It was not a road. It was not wide. It was simply a trail of small, bright things waiting for moonlight. That night, when the moon rose, the path began to glow. Softly, quietly, one stone after another, one shell after another, one silver piece of bark after another. The animals gathered to see it. "It looks like the moon spilled a ribbon," said Nella. "It looks like a promise," said Ivara. Luma stood at the beginning of the path with Miri beside her. "What shall we call it?" asked Bram. "The moon path," said Miri. "The remembering path," said Sola. "The don't get lost path," said Nib. Everyone considered this. Then Luma said, "Maybe it can have all those names." So it did. From then on, whenever the night was clear, the path glimmered.
And whenever the clouds came, the animals knew where to gather. Some nights, only Luma and Miri sat on the meadow stone. Some nights, Bram came with berries. Some nights, Sola told stories of the stars. Some nights, the rabbits fell asleep before anything interesting happened. But every night, someone looked up at the moon and remembered the dark night when the forest had learned a secret. The sky gives light, but so can we. Seasons passed. Summer softened into autumn. Leaves turned gold, red, and brown. They floated down like tired butterflies and covered the moon path, so the animals had to sweep it clear with tails, paws, wings, and antlers. Autumn cooled into winter. Snow fell over the forest. Quiet and deep, the moon path disappeared beneath white blankets, but the animals still knew the way by heart. On winter nights, the moon made the snow shine so brightly that the whole forest looked like it had become a dream. Winter melted into spring. New flowers grew beside the path. Fireflies returned. The stream ran fast with fresh water. Tiny birds learned to fly from branch to branch, making brave mistakes. And through every season, Luma kept the acorn lantern in her den. She did not need it every night, but she liked knowing it was there. One spring evening, a young badger named Tovo came to the old oak tree. He looked embarrassed. "I heard," he said, staring at his paws, "that you know about dark paths." Luma tilted her head kindly. "I know a little," I want to visit my aunt beyond the meadow, but I don't like going out after sunset. Everyone says badgers should be brave, but at night the trees look too tall, and the spaces between them look too deep. Luma did not laugh. She did not say, "There is nothing to be afraid of," because she knew that when someone is afraid, saying, "There is nothing," can make them feel even more alone. Instead, she brought out the acorn lantern. "I was afraid once too," she said.
"You?" asked Tovo.
"Yes."
"But you're Luma," he said, as if that explained something. Luma smiled.
"Even Luma was afraid."
She placed the acorn lantern between them.
"Bravery does not mean the path stops being dark. It means you do not have to walk it without light."
Tovo looked at the lantern. "Can I borrow it?"
"Of course," said Luma, "but only if you bring it back. It is a very important acorn."
Tovo nodded solemnly. That night, with a firefly glowing inside the lantern, Tovo walked the moon path. Luma walked with him part of the way, then watched as he continued towards his aunt's home. He moved slowly. He looked back twice, but he kept going. The next morning, he returned the lantern with a little bunch of spring flowers tied to its handle. "For saying I could be afraid and still go," he said. Luma placed the flowers beside her bed. After that, the acorn lantern became known throughout the forest. A sparrow borrowed it when she had to find her fallen feather collection.
A young rabbit borrowed it when he wanted to prove he could sleep one night in the meadow, though he came home after 7 minutes, and everyone praised him anyway. A mole borrowed it, even though he mostly lived underground, and admitted he liked the idea of carrying moonlight more than he needed it. Each time the lantern returned, it came with something small: a feather, a stone, a berry, a story. Luma kept them all in a little corner of her den, not because she wanted treasures, but because each one reminded her that small lights travel farther than anyone expects. One night, many months after the first dark evening, Luma climbed again onto the meadow stone. Miri was beside her, older now, but still wearing her acorn cap. The moon was full. The forest was quiet. The moon path glowed. "Do you ever miss the night when we were scared?" asked Miri. Luma thought about it. "I do not miss being scared," she said, "but I am grateful for what we found there." "What did we find?" Luma looked around. She saw Bram sleeping beside a berry basket. She saw the rabbits curled in the grass. She saw Sola watching the sky. She saw Ivara standing at the edge of the meadow, silver light on her antlers. She saw fireflies blinking above the flowers. She saw the path they had made together. "We found each other," said Luma. Miri leaned against her. "That was a good thing to find." The moon climbed higher. The meadow grew softer. The animals slept. And Luma, who had once thought the moon was only above her, understood something new. The moon was above, yes, but it was also in the stones, in the water, in the glowworms, in the fireflies, in the stories, in the kindness of a friend walking beside you. And sometimes, most wonderfully, it was in a little acorn lantern carried through the dark by someone who was afraid, but kept walking anyway. Luma yawned. Miri yawned too. The whole forest seemed to yawn with them, so they left the meadow stone and followed the moon path home. At Mary's burrow, they whispered goodnight. At the old oak tree, Luma slipped into her den. She placed the acorn lantern beside her. Outside, the moonlight rested on the roots of the oak. The leaves whispered. The stream hummed. The night wrapped the forest in a blanket of blue and silver. Luma curled her tail over her nose. Her eyes closed, and just before sleep carried her away, she whispered, as she always did, "Good night, old lantern." And from above, and from the stones, and from the stream, and from every tiny kindness glowing quietly in the world, the night seemed to whisper back, "Good night, little one. Sleep safely. The light knows the way home." So guys, this is the end of the story. Good night to all. I hope you enjoyed my video.
Hi guys, I have a new bedtime story just for you. It is called The Cabin and the Rain. You've been walking for a while now, down a soft dirt path that winds between tall pines. The light is fading, slow and gentle, the way it does at the end of a very long day. And just as the first drops of rain begin to fall, small ones, patient ones, you see it, a little cabin tucked between the trees, warm yellow light glowing in the windows, a thin curl of smoke rising from the chimney, drifting sideways into the misty air. It's waiting for you. It's been waiting all day. You climb the 3 wooden steps to the porch, and they creak softly beneath you, each one a small hello. The rain is picking up now, tapping on the porch roof above your head, but you're dry. You're safe. You reach for the door handle, smooth, cool brass, and the door swings open with a quiet sigh. Inside, the air is warm. It smells like cedar and wood smoke and something faintly sweet, maybe cinnamon, maybe just the memory of it. You close the door behind you, and the sound of the rain softens into something distant and kind. A hush, a blanket of sound wrapped around the whole world. You slip off your shoes. The floorboards are smooth and warm under your feet, worn soft by years of quiet evenings just like this one. There's a fire burning low in the stone fireplace. Orange light flickers across the walls, across the old armchair with its deep cushions, across the thick knitted blanket folded over its arm. The fire crackles, a gentle pop, a soft hiss, and settles again, like it's getting comfortable too. You cross the room slowly. There's no reason to hurry. There's nothing left to do today. Everything that needed doing is done, or it can wait, and either way, it isn't yours to carry tonight. On the small wooden table by the window, someone has left a kettle and a mug and a little jar of chamomile flowers. You fill the kettle and set it over the fire, and while you wait, you stand at the window and watch the rain. It's falling steadily now, silver threads against the darkening trees. Each drop lands on the glass and slides down slowly, tracing thin, winding paths, joining other drops, becoming small, quiet rivers. You follow one with your eyes, then another. The world outside is getting blurry and soft, all deep green and grey blue, and the window holds it at a distance, like a painting of a storm instead of the storm itself. The kettle begins to murmur, not a whistle, just a low, contented sound, like humming. You pour the water over the chamomile flowers and watch the steam rise, curling and unhurried. The scent reaches you, gentle, grassy, a little like honey. You carry the mug to the armchair. You sink into it, and the cushions accept you completely, holding you the way still water holds a floating leaf. You pull the blanket over your legs. It's heavier than it looks, a good weight, a grounding weight, and warm, as if it had been waiting by the fire just for you. The rain drums on the roof, soft and steady, thousands of tiny fingertips tapping out a rhythm with no beginning and no end. You take a slow sip of tea. Warmth moves through you, down through your chest, out to your fingertips. You let your shoulders drop. You didn't realize you'd been holding them up all day, but you were, and now you don't have to. The fire shifts. A log settles deeper into the embers, sending up a small swirl of sparks that rise and fade like tiny orange stars. Outside, thunder rolls somewhere far away. So far away it isn't even thunder anymore, just a low, round sound at the edge of the world. It isn't coming closer, it's moving on, past distant hills, taking all its noise and urgency somewhere else. Here there is only rain and fire and you. You watch the flames for a while. They move like slow dancers, folding and unfolding, orange into gold, into deep, quiet red. There is nothing to figure out in a fire, nothing to solve. It just burns softly and asks nothing of you at all. Your eyes grow heavy, not tired exactly, just heavy in that pleasant way, like the blanket, like the rain. You let them close only halfway, and the room turns to soft focus, firelight and shadow, warmth and hush. You think vaguely of the day behind you, and you notice something. It's already far away. All of it. The conversations, the small worries, the things you meant to do. They've drifted out into the rain, and the rain is carrying them gently down the path, out through the trees, away. They'll keep. Everything keeps until morning. The tea is finished now, the mug warm and empty in your hands. You set it down on the little table beside you, and it makes the smallest sound, a soft click of ceramic on wood, and that is the last task of the day, the very last one. It is done. Across the room, there's a bed tucked under the sloped ceiling, piled with quilts. You rise from the chair slowly, the blanket still around your shoulders like a cape, and you make your way over, floorboards murmuring softly beneath each step. The quilts are cool at first when you slide beneath them, then warm, so quickly warm, holding your shape like they've known it forever. The pillow is soft and deep. You settle in and settle again, and find the exact position where every part of you is held. From here, you can still see the fire, lower now, mostly embers, glowing like a small, patient heart across the room. And you can hear the rain above you, closer now, right there on the other side of the roof. It taps and patters and streams, steady as breathing, in and out. The rain doesn't rush. It has all night. It will fall while you sleep, filling the streams in the forest, rinsing the pine needles, softening the earth. It will keep watch over the cabin, over the glowing embers, over you. It has done this 1,000 nights before, and it knows exactly what to do. Your body grows heavier against the mattress. Your breathing slows to match the rain. Somewhere in the dark outside, an owl calls once, a low velvet sound, and then even the owl goes quiet, tucking itself against the trunk of some old tree, closing its round eyes. The fire settles one more time, a whisper of embers, a soft orange sigh, and you are warm, and you are safe, and there is nowhere else you need to be, not tonight, not for hours and hours. The whole night stretches out before you like a long, slow river, and all you have to do is float. The rain falls, the embers glow, the cabin holds you, the way it has held every weary traveller who ever found it at the end of a long day, quietly, completely, asking nothing. Your thoughts grow soft around the edges. They drift apart like clouds after a storm, thinning, opening, letting the dark sky through. And the dark is not empty. It is full of rest. It has been saving a place for you all day. You sink a little deeper. The rain grows a little softer. And somewhere between one breath and the next, between the patter on the roof and the hush of the embers, sleep comes to find you. It comes gently, like the rain came. A few small drops at first, and then everywhere, all at once, soft and warm and deep. Good night. Sleep well. The rain will be here, falling softly all night
sleep softly, and I'll see you in the next story. Wherever you are, I hope you're warm and safe. Sweet dreams, and come back whenever you need the rain. Tonight, we are going somewhere warm, somewhere quiet, somewhere that smells of vanilla, warm milk, cinnamon, and freshly baked bread. So settle comfortably into your pillow. Let your eyes close whenever they feel ready. Allow your jaw to soften. Let your shoulders become heavy, and take one slow, peaceful breath and gently let it go. There is nowhere you need to be tonight. There is nothing waiting for you to finish. For now, you can simply listen. In the oldest part of a small town stood a bakery called the Sugar Spoon. It was squeezed between a clockmaker's shop and a tiny store that sold buttons, ribbons, and colourful rolls of thread. The bakery had a wide front window. During the day, the window was filled with cakes, pastries, and loaves of bread. There were round cakes with smooth cream tops, tiny fruit tarts arranged in perfect rows, soft rolls dusted with flour, cinnamon buns curled like sleeping snails, and delicate biscuits shaped like moons, stars, and little teacups. Every morning, people walked past the bakery and slowed down. Some stopped to look through the glass. Others stepped inside, following the sweet scent drifting through the door. A small silver bell hung above the entrance. Whenever someone entered, it made a soft sound. Ting! But at night, the bakery was completely different. The curtains were drawn, the chairs were placed upside down on the tables, the ovens cooled, the mixing bowls rested on their shelves, and the silver bell above the door remained perfectly still. The bakery belonged to a baker named Mira. Mira wore her dark hair in a loose braid and always had a little flower on the tip of her nose. She woke before sunrise every morning. She prepared the dough while the town was still sleeping. She mixed flour, water, salt, butter, and a little sugar. Round and round, round and round. She kneaded the bread slowly against the wooden counter. Press, fold, turn, press, fold, turn. When the dough was ready, she covered it with a clean cloth and left it to rise. Mira believed that dough should never be hurried. Everything soft needs time, she often whispered. At the end of each day, after the final customer had gone home, Mira carefully cleaned the bakery. She wiped every table. She swept every crumb from the floor. She polished the glass cake stand, and she lined up the jars on the shelves. Sugar, cocoa, vanilla, cinnamon, nutmeg, tiny silver sweets, dried berries, and colourful sprinkles that made a quiet rattling sound whenever the jar was moved. Shh, shh, shh. Then Mira prepared one final cup of warm milk. She sat beside the kitchen window and watched the town settle into the evening. One by one, the upstairs windows across the street grew dark. The clockmaker locked his door. The button seller rolled down her striped awning. The last bicycle rolled slowly across the square, and soon the whole town was asleep. One evening, Mira noticed something unusual.
She had just placed the clean wooden spoons into their drawer when she heard a very faint sound behind her. It was not the doorbell. It was not the clock. It was not the old refrigerator humming quietly in the corner. It sounded like a tiny sigh. Mira stood completely still. There it was again, a soft little sigh. Mira turned toward the cake counter. Inside the glass case stood a small vanilla cake. It had 3 pale layers, smooth cream icing, and 7 tiny strawberries arranged around the top. The cake had been baked that morning, but no one had chosen it. Now only 1 slice remained. Mira leaned closer. "Was that you?" she whispered. The cake did not answer. Of course it did not answer. It was a cake. Mira smiled at herself. "You must be tired," she said. She lifted the glass cover and gently placed a clean cloth over the remaining slice. Then she switched off the kitchen lights. "Good night, little cake." Mira went upstairs to her room above the bakery. She washed the flour from her hands. She changed into her softest nightclothes. Then she climbed into bed. But just as she began to fall asleep, she heard something downstairs. Tap, tap, tap. Mira opened her eyes. She listened carefully. Tap, tap, tap. It sounded as though someone very small was tapping a spoon against a cup. Mira wrapped herself in a dressing gown and quietly walked
she saw something she had never seen before. All the pastries were asleep, not simply resting on their trays. They were truly sleeping. The cinnamon buns were breathing slowly, becoming slightly larger and smaller with every breath. The bread rolls were leaning against one another like soft pillows. The biscuits were tucked underneath folded napkins, and the last slice of vanilla cake was lying beneath its clean cloth.
The cake gave another peaceful little sigh. Mira covered her mouth so she would not laugh too loudly. On the counter, a teaspoon had somehow fallen against a teacup. The breeze from the open window was moving it gently. Tap, tap, tap. Mira crossed the room and closed the window. Then she carefully adjusted the cloth covering the vanilla cake. "Sweet dreams," she whispered. The slice of cake settled more deeply beneath its cover. From that night onward, Mira began to notice the secret sleeping habits of everything she baked. The plain bread loaves fell asleep very quickly. As soon as the bakery became quiet, they grew still and warm. They liked to sleep close together on the bottom shelf. The croissants took longer. They were restless pastries. They shifted from one side to the other. Sometimes a flaky corner would lift in the air before dropping back onto the tray. The fruit tarts slept neatly and politely. They never moved.
But the strawberries on top occasionally murmured to one another. The biscuits liked bedtime stories. They would not settle until Mira read a few pages from an old recipe book. She would sit beside their tin and whisper instructions for sponge cake, apple pie, or honey bread. "Mix the butter and sugar until smooth," she read one evening. "Add the eggs, one at a time." Inside the tin, the biscuits became very still. Fold in the flour gently. One biscuit gave a tiny, sleepy crunch. Bake until golden, and then they were asleep. Mira never told anyone about the sleeping pastries. She thought it was better to let them keep their quiet nighttime secret. But she began changing the bakery's evening routine. Before closing, she warmed the room slightly. She placed soft cloths over the cake stands. She moved the noisier jars away from the sleeping biscuits, and she stopped stacking the bread rolls too closely together. "You all need room to breathe," she whispered.
There was only one item in the bakery that never seemed able to sleep. It was a small, round bun called Pip. Pip had been made from sweet dough with a little honey and orange peel. He had a shiny golden top and one small raisin in the center. Pip was baked every morning with the other buns, but somehow he was never sold. Whenever a customer pointed toward him, they changed their mind. They chose a croissant or a slice of cake or a warm cheese roll. So every night, Pip remained alone on the top shelf. Mira covered him carefully, but while all the other baked goods slept, Pip stayed awake. He rolled slightly to the left, then slightly to the right. He counted the jars on the opposite shelf. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He listened to the kitchen clock. Tick, tock, tick, tock. He tried to close his eyes, but buns do not really have eyes, so Pip was not sure whether he was doing it correctly. One night, Mira entered the kitchen and found Pip sitting upright beneath his cloth. "You're still awake," she whispered. Pip gave a tiny wobble. "I don't know how to fall asleep," he said. His voice was soft and warm, like bread fresh from the oven. Mira pulled out a chair and sat beside him. "What happens when you try?" she asked. "I begin thinking," Pip replied. "What do you think about?" "Everything." Mira nodded. That was something she understood. "What kind of everything?" Pip thought for a moment. "I wonder why no one chose me today." Mira listened. "I wonder whether my top is shiny enough." She listened.
I wonder whether I have too much orange peel.
She listened.
I wonder whether I should have been a cinnamon bun.
Mira smiled gently. And when you have finished wondering about those things?
I begin wondering about tomorrow.
Mira rested her elbows on the counter. Pip, she whispered, you do not have to solve tomorrow tonight. Pip became quiet.
But what if tomorrow is exactly the same as today?
Then tomorrow can take care of itself when it arrives. Pip rolled slightly closer. What should I do with all my thoughts? Mira looked around the bakery. On the highest shelf stood an empty glass jar. She reached up and brought it down. It was a simple jar with a wooden lid. Mira placed it beside Pip. We can put them in here, she said. Put what in there? Your thoughts. Pip looked at the empty jar. Will they fit? We'll see. Mira removed the lid. Tell me the first thought. Pip hesitated. I am worried that nobody will choose me tomorrow. Mira pretended to lift the thought carefully from the air. She held it between her fingers. Then she placed it inside the jar. Tap. There, she whispered. Pip watched. Tell me another one. I might not be sweet enough. Mira collected the thought. She placed it in the jar. Tap. I might be too small. Tap. My raisin might be crooked. Tap. I do not know where buns go after they leave the bakery. Tap. What if the cinnamon buns are more interesting than I am? Tap. What if I never discover what I am supposed to be? Tap. Mira placed the wooden lid on the jar. All safely inside, she said. Pip looked at the jar. What happens to them now? They can stay here until morning. And then? In the morning, you may open the jar and see whether you still need them. Pip was silent for a moment. What if I don't? Then we can sprinkle them into the flour bin and make something new. Pip liked that idea. Mira carried him to a small round basket near the cooling oven. She folded a soft napkin underneath him. Another napkin went over the top. The oven was no longer hot, but a little warmth remained in the stones. It was just enough to make the corner feel cozy. Mira sat beside the basket. Now, she whispered, you can listen to the bakery becoming quiet. Together they listened. The clock ticked. Tick, tock. Tick, tock. The shelves made small settling sounds. The refrigerator hummed. The pipes inside the wall gave a gentle sigh. Outside, a little rain began tapping against the window. Tip, tap, tip, tap. Mira lowered her voice even more. The day is finished, she whispered. You have done everything you needed to do. Pip rested against the napkin. The doors are locked. Pip became still. The counters are clean. The warm air surrounded him. The bowls are resting. His thoughts felt farther away. The spoons are sleeping in their drawer. Pip gave a tiny yawn. The flour is quiet inside its bag. His golden top sank gently against the soft cloth. The sugar is still. The rain continued against the window. Tip, tap, tip, tap. And you are safe here, Mira whispered. Pip tried to think about tomorrow, but tomorrow seemed very far away. He tried to wonder whether his raisin was crooked, but he could not remember why that had mattered. He listened to the rain. He felt the warmth of the oven stones. He smelled cinnamon, vanilla, and bread. And for the first time since he had been baked, Pip fell asleep. He dreamed he was floating inside a large white mixing bowl. The bowl was as soft as a cloud. Instead of being filled with dough, it was filled with warm milk. Pip floated gently in a circle, round and round, round and round. Above him, tiny sugar crystals shimmered like stars, but they did not shine too brightly. They glowed softly, just enough to make the dream feel peaceful. In the dream, Pip was not worried about being chosen. He did not wonder whether himself with the cinnamon buns. He simply floated, slowly, quietly, comfortably, and whenever a thought tried to enter the dream, it turned into a little bubble. The bubble rose through the warm milk, up, 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 then disappeared with a soft sound. Pop. Another thought became another bubble. Up, 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 pop. And another. Up, 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 pop. Soon there were no thoughts left, only warm milk, soft sugar stars, and the gentle movement of the bowl, round and round, round and round. The next morning, Mira came downstairs before sunrise. The bakery was dim and peaceful. She found Pip sleeping deeply inside his basket. She did not wake him. Instead, she began preparing the day's bread. She poured flour into a bowl. She added warm water, a little salt, a little yeast. Then she mixed everything together, round and round, round and round. As the sky outside grew pale, the bakery slowly filled with the scent of fresh bread. The cinnamon buns began to wake. The biscuits rustled inside their tin. The fruit tarts stretched beneath the glass cover. Finally, Pip opened his imaginary eyes. "Good morning," Mira whispered. "Good morning," he replied sleepily. "How do you feel?" Pip thought for a moment. Soft. That is a very good way for a bun to feel. Pip looked toward the glass jar. "My thoughts are still in there." "Yes. Do I have to open it?" "Only when you're ready." Pip rolled toward the jar. Mira removed the wooden lid. She looked inside. The jar appeared empty. Pip leaned closer. "Where did they go?" "Perhaps they became smaller while you slept." "Can thoughts do that?" "Most of them do." That morning, Mira placed Pip in the center of the front window. She arranged the other buns around him. Pip's golden top shone in the morning light. His raisin was still slightly crooked, but Pip no longer minded. Soon, the silver bell above the bakery door rang. Ting! A woman entered with a small child wearing a yellow coat. The child looked through the glass case. Mira waited. The child pointed directly at Pip. "That one, please." Pip felt a tiny jump of surprise. Mira smiled. An excellent choice. She lifted Pip carefully from the tray. She placed him inside a small paper bag. Before folding the bag closed, she leaned closer. "Remember," she whispered, "you do not have to solve tomorrow tonight." Pip gave a small, happy wobble. Then he left the bakery with the child in the yellow coat. That evening, Mira placed the empty thought jar back on the highest shelf. From then on, whenever one of the pastries could not sleep, Mira brought down the jar. Sometimes the croissants filled it with restless thoughts. Sometimes the cakes worried that their decorations were not perfect. Sometimes a loaf of bread wondered whether it had risen enough. Mira listened to each worry. One by one, she placed them inside. Tap, tap, tap. Then she closed the lid, and the bakery grew quiet. Perhaps you have a few thoughts that are keeping you awake tonight. Thoughts about today. Thoughts about tomorrow. Thoughts about something you said. Something you forgot. Something you still need to do. You do not have to push those thoughts away. You do not have to argue with them. Just imagine a clear glass jar beside your bed. It has a smooth wooden lid, and it is empty, waiting patiently. Take the first thought. You do not have to explain it. You do not need to fix it. Just place it inside. Tap. Take another thought. Place it in the jar. Tap. Anything unfinished can go inside. Tap. Anything uncertain. Tap. Anything heavy. Tap. Anything that belongs to tomorrow. Tap. Now gently place the lid
has risen, after you have rested, after your mind feels softer. But tonight, the bakery is closed, the counters are clean, the bowls are resting, the wooden spoons are sleeping in their drawer, the flour is quiet inside its bag, the sugar is perfectly still, the ovens are cooling, and the pastries are tucked safely beneath their soft cloths. The cinnamon buns are sleeping, the bread rolls are sleeping, the fruit tarts are sleeping, the little biscuits are sleeping inside their tin, and somewhere in the town, Pip is dreaming inside a warm kitchen. Perhaps he is dreaming of the white mixing bowl. Perhaps he is floating through warm milk once again. Round and round, round and round. Outside the bakery, the streets are empty. The clockmaker's shop is dark. The ribbons in the button store hang without moving. The silver bell above the bakery door is still. Nothing needs to enter. Nothing needs to leave. Everything can remain exactly where it is, and you can remain exactly where you are. Comfortable, warm, safe, your pillow supporting your head, your blanket resting gently across your body, your breathing slow and natural, in and out, in and out. The day is finished. You have done enough. You have carried enough. You have thought enough. Tomorrow does not need you yet. For now, let every sound become softer. Let every thought become quieter. Let the bakery fade gently into the distance. The shelves, the jars, the cakes, the warm ovens, all becoming softer, farther away, quieter and quieter. The pastries are sleeping. The town is sleeping. And now you may sleep too. Good night. Good night. Good night. Hello and welcome. I'm so glad you're here tonight. Wherever you are and whatever kind of day you have had, this moment belongs to you now. You can let the outside world grow a little quieter. You can put down everything you have been carrying. There is nothing you need to finish, nothing you need to fix, and nothing you need to figure out right now. Just make yourself comfortable. Let your head rest softly against the pillow. Allow your shoulders to relax. Let your hands become still, and gently unclench your jaw. Take a slow breath in, and then breathe out, letting the day leave you little by little. Tonight's story is called The Little House at the Edge of Evening. It is a peaceful story about a tired traveler, a welcoming home, and the quiet comfort of realizing that not every decision has to be made tonight. So, pull the blanket a little closer. Let the room become calm around you. Let my voice keep you company. And when you are ready, our story will begin. At the far end of a quiet country road, where the hills softened into fields and the fields slowly faded into forest, there stood a little stone house with a blue wooden door. No one hurried past that house. There were no buses to catch, no appointments waiting, no clocks chiming impatiently from distant towers. The narrow road ended just beyond the garden gate, as though it too had grown tired and decided to rest. The house belonged to a woman named Clara. Clara had lived there for many years, though she could never quite remember how many. Time moved differently in the little house. Winters passed in the sound of rain against the windows. Spring arrived with birdsong in the chimney. Summer smelled of lavender and warm earth, and autumn brought golden leaves that gathered quietly beside the doorstep. Each evening, just before sunset, Clara followed the same gentle routine. First, she filled the kettle with water from the deep kitchen sink. Then she placed it on the old iron stove and waited for the soft beginning of its song. While the water warmed, she stepped outside to close the garden gate. The garden was small but full of life. Rosemary grew beside the path. Tiny white flowers climbed the stone wall. A pear tree leaned toward the kitchen window, as though hoping to hear what was being cooked inside. "Good night," Clara would say to the garden. She always said it quietly, but the leaves seemed to hear. That evening, the sky was the color of warm milk, with a spoonful of honey stirred into it. The last light rested on the hills, turning every blade of grass golden at the edges.
slowly toward the house. He carried a worn brown bag over one shoulder, and his coat was covered in the pale dust of the road. He did not look lost exactly, but he looked like someone who had been walking for so long that he had forgotten what it felt like to arrive. Clara waited beside the gate. When the traveller came closer, he gave her a tired smile. "I'm sorry to disturb you," he said. "Is there a village nearby?" "The nearest village is several miles away," Clara replied. The man looked back at the road. Evening was settling quickly now. Shadows were stretching between the trees. The first stars had begun to appear. "I thought I would reach it before dark," he said. Clara looked at his tired face. Then she looked at the empty road behind him. "The kettle is already on," she said. "You may as well come inside." The traveler hesitated. "I don't want to be any trouble." "You won't be," Clara said. "The house has more chairs than it needs." So the traveler followed her through the blue door. Inside, the little house was warm and softly lit. Copper pans hung above the stove. A thick rug covered the stone floor. Shelves lined the walls, filled with books, candles, jars of dried herbs, and small objects collected from forgotten places. The traveller set down his bag. The kettle began to whistle. Clara poured the hot water into 2 cups. She added chamomile, a slice of apple, and a little honey to each one. Then they sat beside the fire. For a while, neither of them spoke. Outside, darkness settled over the garden. The wind moved gently through the pear tree, brushing the branches against the window. The traveller held the warm cup between his hands. "I had forgotten how quiet a room could be," he said. Clara smiled. "Most rooms are quiet," she replied. "People simply carry a great deal of noise into them." The traveller looked down at his tea. "I suppose I do." The fire cracked softly. After a while, Clara brought out bread, cheese, and a bowl of thick vegetable soup. The traveller ate slowly, as though he had not had a proper meal in many days. When the bowl was empty, he leaned back in his chair. "That was the best meal I've had in years." "It was only soup," Clara said. "Perhaps," he replied. "But I think hunger changes the taste of things." Clara nodded. "So does tiredness." The traveller looked toward the window. "I've been trying to reach the coast," he said. "There is a ship leaving in a few days. I told myself I had to be on it." "What is waiting for you across the sea?" Clara asked. The traveller was silent for a long moment. "I'm not sure." Clara did not ask another question. Instead, she stood and added another log to the fire. The room filled with the warm scent of cedar. "There is a small bedroom upstairs," she said. "The sheets are clean, and the window looks toward the hills." "I should leave early," the traveller replied. "You may," Clara said. "But morning will come whether you worry about it or not." He smiled faintly. "That sounds very simple." "Most useful things do." Clara showed him upstairs. The bedroom was small, with a wooden bed, a wool blanket, and a lamp on the bedside table. A round window looked over the dark garden. The traveller placed his bag beside the chair. Clara opened the window slightly. Cool night air drifted into the room, carrying the scent of grass and distant rain. "You will hear owls later," she said. "They live in the old oak tree." "Thank you," the traveller replied. Clara paused at the door. "You do not have to decide anything tonight," she told him. Then she closed the door gently. The traveller lay down beneath the wool blanket. At first, sleep did not come. His mind continued along the road without him. It hurried toward the village. It searched for the coast. It counted the days before the ship departed. It opened old memories, examined unfinished conversations, and arranged tomorrow's worries into long, untidy rows. But the little house was patient. The fire downstairs made a low,
filled the room.
The traveller woke to the smell of fresh bread. For a few moments he did not remember where he was. Then he heard Clara moving quietly in the kitchen below. He dressed and went downstairs. Breakfast was waiting on the table: bread, butter, pear jam, and 2 cups of tea. Clara was standing beside the open door, scattering crumbs for the birds. "Did you sleep?" she asked. "Yes," he said, "better than I expected." Sleep often arrives when it realizes it is not being chased. They ate breakfast together. Together, they closed the garden gate. "Good night," the traveller said to the garden. The leaves moved softly in reply. Inside, the fire was warm, the cups were waiting, and for one more night there was nowhere else either of them needed to be. The little stone house rested beneath the stars. Behind its blue door, the fire burned low and warm. 2 empty teacups waited beside the hearth. Outside, the garden was still. The pear tree moved gently in the night breeze, and somewhere in the old oak tree an